Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm going to be chatting to you about tips for homeschooling multiple kids. I am Christine. I'm a second generation homeschooling mama of 3 kids. My kids are currently 7, 5, and 3. And I've been homeschooling this is our 3rd year now, homeschooling. And this is the first year where I feel like I've truly been homeschooling 2 kids, like full on, because we were doing 2nd grade and kindergarten. I haven't started preschool with my youngest yet, and so that will be happening next year though. Yeah, this year has been a little bit different. It's also the first year I haven't really had a toddler in like the typical sense of a toddler. Last year was really, really hard. It was probably the hardest year of our homeschool. The year before I had a baby, and that was easier because she still slept at least a couple times during the day. As a toddler, she only had 1 nap, and it was just, there's a lot of feelings when you're a toddler, you know? And so this year has automatically been easier because she's been a lot happier to go off and just play on her own, whereas last year it was a lot more like demanding on me. But homeschooling 2 kids has actually been easier than I expected it to be, and I'm going to just talk about a few points that I wrote down on how I feel like I've made it work well. So the first thing is to have a plan, and it's funny because some of these points will sound like they're like contradicting each other, but it does actually make sense. But to have a plan, especially when you have little kiddos, I feel like it's just really important to have a rhythm to your day so they know what to expect and what's going to come next. It doesn't have to be like a strict schedule or anything like that, but just like a rhythm and an understanding of like, this is what's happening next. Because a lot of the time kids can get like caught up in their play and get really frustrated when you try and pull that from them. So giving them lots of warning, heads up, like this is what's coming next, I feel like is very healthy and helpful for kiddos. So I like to have a routine that we do basically every day. They know what to expect, and it means that I have to do less. Like I don't have to like stand there and tell them to do every little thing because they're in a habit and a routine of doing it. The next thing I would do is to prioritize what's super important to you, because there's going to be days where everything turns to custard and you're just going to have to do like the bare minimum. And so like know what those things are, what you can compromise on, what you can negotiate, and like what absolutely has to get done. And this might depend, especially if you live in a place where you have to have like recorded hours for certain subjects or whatever. So yeah, that is something I would also do. And then the next thing was to be flexible, which sounds really funny when I said to have a plan. But you can plan to be flexible. And this is something I talked about a lot in my recent video on how I plan my homeschool year, because there is like, I remember when I first started and I read a lot of people being like, no, don't use a planner, like you can't use that, like you can't plan because everything changes all the time. And I'm just gonna call it, that's not true. It's not true because I have proved it's not true. My mom proved it was not true. She was an avid planner. She loved planning. I love planning. But you can plan to have flexibility in your day. You can plan out things to give yourself some accountability and a bit of a routine and a rhythm, but recognize that things are going to come up. Kids get sick, toddlers throw tantrums, that kind of thing. And so that's when you kind of just need to know, like, what are the main things that we need to hit here? When you're homeschooling multiple kids, it can feel like you're juggling things back and forth all the time. But for instance, sometimes, like, I know that reading is something I really want to focus on with one of my kids. And so we might be having a hard time, like, fitting that in at a specific time of day. And so I'll just be like, you know what? Before bed, we're going to do this. We're going to set it for this time. And so you don't have to do everything at like the typical time of day that school is done. You know, you've got a whole day. Don't feel like you have to limit all of your schooling to be done in one tiny bit. And I think that's, yeah, especially relevant when you're homeschooling more than one kid. And also some kids learn better at different times of day. So keep that in mind. If you feel like you can make that work in your day a little bit better, then do that. Okay, the next thing is choosing curriculum that works for your family. And this is something that I've come to find really helpful with The Good and the Beautiful, and the way that their lessons are set out for their language arts and their math. It's broken up into segments, so I can kind of like do a bit with one kid while another kid works on some independent work, and vice versa. And we just switch and go back and forth. And then sometimes we can take a part of the lesson and do that later in the day. For instance, like their booster, reading cards. Sometimes I'll do that in the evening as opposed to when we're doing all of our other schoolwork. And that works super well for us. And I feel like the other thing is a lot of people ask this question when they have younger children, and my kids are all very close in age. The biggest gap we have is 2 years. And so you feel overwhelmed because they all need you so much at that age. But as they get older, they will need you less and less because the goal is for them to become more independent with their schoolwork. And so you want them to become self-motivated and independent learners. And so little by little, it does get easier. But choosing a curriculum where you're not necessarily needed for the entire thing can be very helpful. And then finally, my last tip is to utilize group subjects. Don't try and teach everybody science and geography and history and art individually, especially if your kids are super close in age. There is no need to do that. You can totally make them group subjects and teach them like that. And that is what we do hugely. And it means that the only things that my kids are working on their own are language arts, math, and handwriting. Handwriting they can do on their own. They often do it when I'm reading. And math and language arts we do like concurrently, like I'll have them both working on it at the same time, and I just go back and forth between the two. Sometimes that works better than others, depending on the length of the lessons or if they're understanding a concept or not. But generally speaking, that is how it works really well for us. I will be adding a third child into the mix next year. Even this year, I'm going to start doing some before 5 in a row with her, and that's a little bit different. That'll be very individual for her because I want that to be one-on-one with us right now. Next year, there'll be a bit of preschool in the mix, so I'll be able to report back to you and let you know how that's going because, yeah, that'll be different again. But I'm excited for it. I love, love, love homeschooling my children. It is one of the greatest blessings in my life, and I do not, I always see the privilege that it is to be able to do so because I know so many would love to and cannot, and I'm really, really grateful for the opportunity to do it. So, yeah, I hope that this was helpful to those of you who are trying to homeschool multiple kids now, and maybe those of you who have like a toddler or a baby in tow. That can be really challenging. I said that to somebody the other day. If you're wondering like what you're doing wrong, you're not. It's just really that hard. But it is just a season and it will get easier. So thank you for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
What if the world had more of your smile? What if the wind could spread your love? What if your sweetness could reach everyone? There'd be no wars.